Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping straight into the thick of Formula One. We've got a lot to unpack from Spa-Francorchamps, quite the chaotic weekend there in Belgium. And we'll also, look ahead a bit to Hungary and what might happen there after all this. Our mission really is to dig into what one F1 blog pretty bluntly called a compendium of disasters for some big names. We want to look at the facts, maybe some questionable calls, and what it all says about, well, performing under pressure at this level. We'll focus on the info you shared, especially around Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, and their teams.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how you see these small errors, maybe misjudgments, suddenly snowball into a complete catastrophe. Even for guys with tons of experience, teams with huge resources, it happens. Which brings us to the big question, doesn't it? How much was just plain bad luck out there, and how much was maybe a chain of strategic mistakes they could have avoided? That's what we need to figure out.
Okay, yeah, luck versus strategy. Let's start breaking down this compendium of disasters, beginning with some, well, pretty historic lows at Spa, based on our sources.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a bad race, it was, record-breakingly bad for some.
Absolutely. I mean, context is everything in F1, right? That qualifying session, it was Aston Martin's worst ever. P19 and P20. Think about that. Their worst combined qualifying result ever. It really says something about where they were that weekend. And for Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, combined grid spots of 15th and 19th, that's the lowest they've ever started together, based purely on performance, on merit.
Right, purely on merit, that's key.
Exactly. It's not like, Japan 2012, where maybe penalties pushed them down. No, this was just pace or lack of it. And then to make it even worse, they both had to start the actual race from the pit lane. Talk about starting on the back foot.
A huge hole to climb out of right away.
It's just miles away from where you expect drivers like them to be.
Okay, but then there's Carlos Sainz. His weekend was, well, a real roller coaster. Our sources point to a pretty strong sprint race. Good pace there, raised some eyebrows, maybe some hope. But then the main race, described as an absolute disaster by one F1 blog. What on earth happened?
It really did just unravel for him, didn't it? It started even before the main race with what the source called an error Pisha, just a silly mistake in classification, set the tone maybe.
It's a silly mistake.
Okay. And then the race itself was just one thing after another. The team, Ferrari, they wanted to pit him early, same lap as Albon, Fernando, Hamilton, were going for it. But the tires weren't ready. Simple as that. In the pit box, no tires waiting for him.
Oh, wow. Seriously?
Yep. So he had to do another lap. And Spa is a long lap, right? That costs huge amounts of time, track position, critical. And then when he finally did pit, the stop itself was slow, just generally slow. Plus, he got caught in the fast lane while others were exiting, so his release back onto the track was slow too. Lost more ground there.
Just compounding errors then.
Exactly. But maybe the biggest single issue, the real mechanical clangor, our source points out, was the front wing adjustment. When they switched him from the intermediate tires to slicks, they didn't adjust the wing correctly.
Didn't adjust it right. What did that do?
Made the car ungovernable, apparently. Just incredibly difficult to handle. So much so, he had to pit again really early just so they could try and fix that wing problem.
Wow. Okay, so a mix of team errors, operational stuff, technical issues. But what about Carlos himself? Did he have a role in this, according to the source?
Well, yeah, that's the other layer. Our source says Carlos himself admitted afterwards that he'd chosen a rain setup for the car.
A rain setup. But it didn't really rain heavily in the race, did it?
No, it didn't. And that's the gamble. Looking back with all the weather info they have and seeing what other teams did,
right,
it was a clear misjudgment. So it wasn't just bad luck hitting him from all sides. It shows how fragile everything is. Team execution, driver calls. One wrong step, like the tire readiness, leads to another, like the wing. A small human error or a driver's gamble. It can sink the whole weekend.
Okay, so that rain setup gamble clearly hurt Sainz and Ferrari.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is they weren't the only ones caught out, right? Aston Martin, with Fernando Alonso usually so sharp strategically, they seemed to fall into a similar trap. Alonso sounded genuinely confused after qualifying too.
Yeah, that was quite telling, wasn't it? His comments after qualifying, our source highlights this. He said, look, we added downforce, but we're still half a second off. He literally said, something happened that we don't understand. The car just wasn't, working, wasn't going forward.
That's worrying coming from him. He usually knows exactly what the car is doing.
Exactly. It's a big red flag. And it leads to the question, why did Aston Martin, a really experienced team with, let's be honest, a sly fox like Fernando driving, why did they also bet so heavily on rain? Why run high downforce? because lots of other teams, the source points out, went the other way. Low downforce. They were sure it wouldn't rain.
And that worked out for them.
Oh, yeah. Big time. High downforce helps in the wet, sure, but on a dry spa, with those long straights, it's just drag, lots of it. It kills your straight line speed, burns up your tires faster, too, because of the load. You're just slower where it counts at spa. Look at Alex Alba in P6 for Williams. Incredible. Or Gasly in the Alpine. He had rocket ship speed on the straights because of that low drag setup. Really hard to pass.
So a massive strategic difference then.
Huge.
Yeah.
It really shows the divide in thinking and, well, who got it right?
And what about those new parts Aston brought?
Yeah.
The front wing, the nose. Did they make things worse? Was it a Piora, a step back, like the source hinted?
Yeah. Well, that's the tricky part. Our source suggests it's hard to be certain if the parts themselves were the problem, a genuine step backward, or if it was something more fundamental. The overall setup, how the car just didn't click with Spa this year. They didn't expect Spa to be tough, but it was.
Right.
Fernando's comments kind of back that up too. Adding downforce, but still being slow, that points to maybe a deeper issue than just a dodgy new wing. And then, on top of all that, the strategy in the race itself, the two-stop they went for, turned out to be dead in the water, as the source puts it.
A one-stop was the way to go.
Yeah, clearly. Now, maybe it's easier for a car like the McLaren to do a one-stop, but Aston, with all that downforce, should theoretically be easier on its tires. Less degradation, you'd think. But they still struggled. It really was, like that blog said, just a compendium of disaster for them. One thing piled on top of another.
It's easy to look at Ferrari and Aston Martin and think, okay, mid-pack struggles, risky gambles gone wrong. But get this. Even Red Bull wasn't immune. Our sources actually point to a Red Bull decision that one F1 blog called a grandissima cagata, a huge screw-up, which is incredible for the dominant team.
It is pretty baffling, isn't it? And the source really drills down on the lack of logic here. Max Verstappen puts it on pole, second after Leclerc's penalty, but effectively pole performance, and he wins the sprint with a specific car setup that's clearly working brilliantly.
Right. So why mess with it?
Exactly. Why touch it? The source makes it crystal clear. The team knew it wasn't going to rain for the main race. They knew what was said in the briefings. They'd even told race control themselves, no rain expected.
They told race control no rain and still changed the car setup.
Seems so. Despite all that information pointing one way, they made a change. It highlights that strange paradox sometimes, doesn't it? When you're so far ahead, maybe you start overthinking things, trying to optimize beyond what's needed, fix something that isn't broken.
A self-inflicted wound, almost.
Kind of feels like it. An unforced error born out of perhaps trying too hard when they already had the winning hand. It's a reminder that even the best, most data-driven teams are still run by humans making judgment calls under pressure.
So we've picked apart all these issues at Spa. The low points, the strategy calls, even Red Bull messing up.
Right.
What does this messy weekend mean going into Hungary next? It's such a different kind of track.
Yeah, Hungary couldn't be much more different, could it? Tight, twisty, slow corners mostly. All about downforce, not straight-line speed like Spa.
So maybe better for the high downforce cars, like Aston Martin, if they get it right.
Potentially, yes. The drag penalty for high downforce isn't nearly as bad there. So if Aston Martin can figure out their fundamental issues, Hungary could suit them better. But there's the psychological side too, isn't there? After a weekend like Spa, do teams like Ferrari get more cautious? Maybe shy away from those big setup gambles?
Play it safer.
Could be. And even Red Bull, despite winning, might be double, triple checking everything now. Maybe less inclined to make those last-minute tweaks. It really shows how one bad weekend can ripple forwards.
So you might see teams overcompensating, maybe.
It's possible. We see it sometimes. Teams react strongly, try to fix everything at once, and maybe create new problems. Finding that balance after a shocker like Spa is really key.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what a weekend at Spa. We saw historic lows for Aston Martin. We saw Ferrari and Carlos Sainz tangled up in strategy gambles and operational errors. And even Red Bull, the leaders, weren't perfect, making what some called a huge screw-up. It really was a masterclass in how things can go wrong in F1, even at very top.
Yeah.
So many moving parts.
It really was. And it leaves us with a fascinating thought, doesn't it? Something for you to maybe chew on until our next deep dive. In a sport that's so incredibly precise, so driven by data, what does a weekend like this compendium of disasters for some really top teams and drivers actually tell us? What does it say about that constant balancing act between all the meticulous planning, the need to adapt instantly in the heat of the moment, and just human judgment under all that pressure? How much do those decisions, the ones that look simple afterwards, really swing things compared to just raw speed or sheer unpredictable luck? Something to think about.